50 years and two remakes later, does the original Black Christmas still hold up? Let's dive into this horror classic and find out. Black Christmas is a 1974 Canadian slasher film produced and directed by Bob Clark and written by Roy Moore. It stars Olivia Hussey, Margot Kidder, John Saxon, and Keir Dullea. It was inspired by the urban legend The Babysitter and the Man Upstairs, and a series of murders that took place in the Westmount neighborhood of Montreal, Quebec. Rob Moore wrote the screenplay under the title Stop Me. The filmmakers made some alterations to the script, primarily shifting the setting to a university with young adult characters. It was shot in Toronto in 1974 on an estimated budget of $686,000 and was distributed by Warner Brothers in North America, eventually grossing $4,053,000 worldwide. When it was released, Black Christmas got mixed reviews, but it has since received critical reappraisal, with film historians noting it for being one of the earliest slasher films. It was also an influence on John Carpenter's Halloween from 1978. It's the first film in the Black Christmas series, being followed by a remake in 2006 and a reimagining in 2019. The 2006 remake was written and directed by Glenn Morgan and was released on December 25, 2006. It's loosely based on the original film, containing more graphic content and a focus into the past of Billy. Andrea Martin was the only original cast member to appear in the film. The 2019 reimagining was directed and co-written by Sophia Takal. Starring Imogen Poots and Carrie Elwes, the film was released on December 13, 2019. The film has very little in common with the original other than the title, and it centers around a sorority. The main storyline has nothing to do with the original storyline or Billy. It has also received a lot of criticism as an extremely feminist film, and generally being a poor horror movie. The Pi Kappa Sigma sorority, which is headed by the booze-swilling house mother, Mrs. Mack, is holding their Christmas party when they begin receiving a string of obscene phone calls from someone the girls call the Moaner, but he identifies himself as Billy. Some of them, like Jess Bradford, don't like the calls. Her brash roommate, Barb Cord, is somewhat amused by the calls. Others don't think much of them, but straight-laced Claire Harrison is offended by them. The calls are just the latest trouble for Jess, who's pregnant and doesn't want to tell her sensitive but volatile boyfriend, Peter. The latest call is a bit more elaborate than previous calls, and Barb decides to make a snide comment in return, which provokes a threat by Billy. The next morning, one of the girls goes missing. The desk sergeant at the police station doesn't think much about this as a missing person case, especially since they are already dealing with another missing person case, a 13-year-old girl named Janice. The police don't act until more information is brought to the attention of Lieutenant Fuller by Claire's boyfriend, Chris. As Lieutenant Fuller and his men investigate, which includes placing a wiretap on the sorority house phones, more and more incidents happen to the girls living at the sorority house. In addition, the obscene calls continue and increasingly have a personal connotation to one of the girls, which includes information that could only be known by those involved. Or is there another reason why the caller knows so much about the specific girl in question? And now for some trivia. A strict rule that Bob Clark had set for himself when it came to writing the female characters was to never objectify them sexually or give them nude scenes. He wanted the college girls to come off as real people and not disposable horror characters waiting to die. The sorority house seen in the film was not a set constructed for the film, but an actual house that had to be rented for the film's production. Some scenes in the script had to be slightly rewritten to accommodate the house's foundation and structure. It still stands to this day as a popular tourist attraction. I've been a horror fan since the late 70s, but Black Christmas is one of those classics I still hadn't seen until 5 years ago. Since then, I've seen the two remakes, and I re-watched the original for this review to see how it held up. Many older horror movies have a hard time holding up because so much has changed, like what we find scary, what they were allowed to show in a movie back then, and the technology of movie making. Black Christmas is not one of them. It holds up really well. It's a shame it doesn't get the attention it deserves and is generally underrated. While it can be a little slow, it builds up suspense using shadows and sounds to create an unsettling environment. And the fact that a lot of the students have gone home for the holiday gives a real sense of isolation. Black Christmas pioneered a lot of horror movie techniques, such as using the POV of the killer, not showing the killer, and tormenting phone calls that are coming from inside the house. And these phone calls are disturbing as hell. There was some great sound design, and the actors were actually reacting to the director, and Billy's voice was added later in post-production. As far as the characters, there was a good mix of personalities among the sorority girls. There's also some good comic relief from Mrs. Mack and the police sergeant. There's also times when the police and detective bumble the investigation. Like when some search party guys are creeping around the house while a cop sits in a car outside the house, supposedly guarding it. While most of the kills are off-screen and there is little gore, the kills are innovative and disturbing. This movie also has a lot of unknowns, which adds to the creepiness. Who is Billy? What happened to him to make him this way? Why is he killing random people? Black Christmas gets a well-deserved 4 out of 5. It's an early slasher that holds up well thanks to its creepy atmosphere and a deranged killer. It's easy to see why it's an inspiration to many movies that followed. It's a welcome addition to my annual December watch list. So have you seen the original Black Christmas? If so, do you think it holds up, or do you prefer one of the remakes? If you want to watch any of them, there are links in the description to where you can stream or buy them.